Well, interestingly, the Secretary of Health for the Czech Republic was encouraging everyone to get the vaccine and said she took it. The president of the Czech Republic said he wouldn't take it. He was scared of the vaccine. Well, guess who got the infection? The Secretary of Health. The president didn't get H1N1. They had 1 million doses of the vaccine ordered for the Czech Republic. They have 800,000 doses that are sitting. No one will take it. So the vast majority of people listened to the advice and didn't take the vaccine. Now, the thing that people need to understand about vaccines, and this is not just the H1N1, but all vaccines. The big secret in the vaccine manufacturing is that they're all contaminated. And they admit they don't know how to get contaminating viruses and mycoplasma out of these vaccines. It's impossible. They're top experts have admitted that. The other thing is almost all the vaccines are now manufactured in China. The United States FDA is not allowed to enter any plant that manufactures vaccines in China. They're allowed to come once every 12 years, and they can look at the records that the Chinese Communist officials give them, and that's how they make the determination that it's safe. Sure.
Let's say that again. The communist Chinese, who have a eugenics policy, one-child policy that meshes with the people that run our government, they're making, and some numbers I've seen, upwards of 90% of the vaccines that we take in Europe and the United States, but more so in the U.S., are being made by China. I mean, this is amazing.
Well, these are the Chinese that contaminated a cough syrup that's estimated to have killed at least 10,000 people worldwide. They contaminated baby food. They've been involved in numerous scandals of contaminating products all over the world. And yet we turn over something like vaccination to the Chinese government, and we're not even allowed to look inside their factories. We just take these millions of doses of vaccine that come from these Chinese plants. They're not even examined once they're manufactured by the FDA. But even in the best of cases, you cannot sterilize. Now, the viruses that are in there, they admit there may be dozens of viruses that cause cancer.
Well, just 2 weeks ago, Doctor, it was in the news that millions of vaccines have this pig cancer virus in it, and I've read the government reports declassified in the 70s that over 100 million Americans were given the polio vaccine that had SV40, which gives people cancer.
Yeah, and they've proven that the really scary thing of this SV40 and the polio vaccine is that it's vertically transmitted. What
communicable.
That means is the virus goes through each generation. So your parents transmitted to you, you transmitted to your children on down the line. And they're seeing a lot of really terrible malignant diseases like mesothelioma and medulloblastoma, ependymomas, in which they're isolating this SV40 virus as the causative virus in these horrible malignancies in children today, showing that it's still being transmitted through generations because, as you said, they've estimated 100 million people contaminated.
Well, more than that, I saw an Indian study, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was years ago, but it was in the major Indian papers, that 100% of their municipal sewer systems were filled with SV40 from the vaccines, and not only is it intergenerational, passed on from parent to parent, from parents to children, their offspring, but that it is transmittable from person to person.
Yeah, and this is a big word because this is a major carcinogenic virus. And the government scientists have just bent over backwards to try to make the case that this is not a dangerous virus. Forever they denied it was even a carcinogenic virus until it was absolutely proven in an NIH lab. Since then they said, well, we'll do epidemiologic studies in the United States and see if there's any increased cancer since we've given the polio vaccine. And so they came out with a big denial, well, we didn't see any increased cancer rate. Well, the people that know about epidemiology studies said, well, the study was fixed, so it wouldn't show it. And so, now that they've actually typed the virus And from the tumors themselves, there's no denying it's not a contaminant. It is the causation of some of the worst malignancies of children we know of.
Well, doctor, let me stop you again. Just from memory, 4 months ago, the AP reported that all over the world, UN polio vaccine is, quote, giving the children a, quote, weaponized super polio. But that was just in a few newspapers. And then we see, I mean, I've talked to other medical doctors. I want to ask you if this is true, but that 30, 40, 50 years ago, when they were in residency, finishing up their medical degree, that they would take them into the ward and show them a 10-year-old with cancer, and it was like finding a four-leaf clover or a leprechaun. It was so rare, and now everywhere I go, there's 5, 10-year-old kids just dying everywhere of cancers, and many times it's linked to formerly rare cancers that have been conclusively proven to be tied in with the SV40. So, A, can you speak to that? And then, B, come on, we know this isn't an accident. I mean, they're eugenicists. I mean, we have all these government documents where they want to reduce our numbers.
Well, it is true about the incidence of these cancers. And all of us older guys talk about that, how these cancers we're seeing now were so rare. You were lucky to see 1 or 2 cases in medical school and in your residency training. Now, we're just seeing them everywhere. Things like pancreatic cancer used to be extremely rare. Lymphomas was nowhere near the incidence that it is now. Now it is the #1 malignancy in 30-year-olds, and rising all the time. So we're seeing a great number of diseases, and even things like asthma. Asthma has increased over 10-fold in the last couple of decades, and it's estimated that it's the vaccine program that's reducing it.
Why is it causing a heightened over autoimmune response?
Yes, an autoimmune response from the components in the vaccine. And we also know that type 1 diabetes, juvenile diabetes, is related to vaccines. This is a new study just came out and made a very strong case for it. Yet their attitude is, well, it's more important that we vaccinate everybody than we worry about a couple of 100,000 kids who are crippled every year and thousands who will die from complications of these vaccines. And you're talking about contaminating the whole population with these viruses that are contaminated. You can't get rid of the virus. These viruses are incorporated in your genetic structure. They're passed on to your children and grandchildren.
Let me stop you again, because there's so many points I want to cover with you. This is incredible. I'll have to do a part 2. You're so gracious to spend this time with us. Going back, and I just had the article up on screen, mainstream news reported, and this was going on in April and May and June of last year, that last year's seasonal flu and this year's seasonal flu, some of the major companies were putting an H1N1 simulant, and then I had medical doctors on that explained that viral simulant was really an attenuated virus, and so now that's why they're saying you take the seasonal flu, then you get H1N1, which is what 4 different studies out of Canada, and you mentioned one out of India, have shown. So please speak to that, but then overall, second question, is it the good news that we're having record numbers of people refuse vaccines because people are finally getting wise to this? Go ahead.
Well, you know, it's true that they're manipulating these vaccines all the time, and they're not telling the public what they're doing. You know, they're putting viruses in, they're putting antigens in these vaccines, and no one's telling the public of what's being added to these vaccines. Now, your second observation, what's happening is secretly, since we've had this disaster with H1N1, which should have been the learning lesson. Right at that time, Merck Pharmaceutical was secretly going to the state legislature to get them to overturn exemption laws so that you couldn't refuse the vaccine because they were so upset that so many people had refused the vaccine in this season. And right here in my own state, I know of this action taking place. And in your state, you know, as Governor Perry was getting the Gardasil as a